Welcome to your Daily 5 for Monday, November 4th, 2024. Before I get too far into this episode, partial credit has to go to Brian Quarfoth over on his channel, thanks to a video he posted which is titled, "A Roger Rabbit Sequel Will Probably Never Happen." And of course, I'll link to it in the show notes because it reminded me of a conversation that Lando and I had, I want to say 3-4 months ago, maybe more, where right after my wife and I had finished watching Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and I was raving about it, which I think I talked about it on the show, but we had a discussion on one of our gameplay sessions, and I didn't record it because it's a game we've played, and I've recorded and posted twice, and I just don't like recording the same games over and over and over, even though I probably should, because it's not really the game, it's sometimes the discussions that I think are worth capturing. But in any event, I wasn't recording it, but we got into the idea of, well, how could you go back to Roger Rabbit? Because in many ways, it seems like something that can never be redone because the way that they made the movie, they just wouldn't pay to do it anymore with the mix of live action and animation, because hand-drawn animation is just kind of gone now, or at least it's certainly not as prevalent as it used to be. But in that discussion, I had a similar idea to what Brian discusses in his video. Brian says that they should make it a prequel series, because he's reacting to some recent comments by Robert Zemeckis that there's apparently a very good Roger Rabbit 2 script around that because of cultural whatever can't be made because Jessica Rabbit is too sexy a character, which Brian's completely correct. That is a ridiculous statement. Of course you could make it. It makes me think that they probably don't have as good a script as they think, or that nobody wants to fund it. It's just nonsense. But in any event, Brian suggests a prequel series, and or a prequel film, and possibly short films. And when Lando and I talked, I had a similar idea. The difference is, to me, Valiant, the series that the title that Brian suggests, makes perfect sense as a streaming series. When everything now has to be a streaming series, and so often they're not that great because they're trying to stretch one story to 10 episodes or whatever, or it's just not a natural fit. I think Valiant, to borrow Brian's title, I can't believe I didn't come up with that title. I just said prequel series, but of course that's the perfect title. He hit it completely correct. It is the perfect title. But that would make sense as a series that is set up like Star Trek Strange New Worlds, where every episode is self-contained. No season-long storylines. The only thing that recurs episode to episode is the main two characters, Eddie and his brother, and a small supporting character set of some kind. But every single episode is its own thing. And, as Brian correctly identifies, what makes the movie work is the contrast between Eddie Valiant, who's a very straightforward, kind of partially depressed and dour character, and Roger Rabbit, who is this ridiculously over-the-top, optimistic, literal cartoony character. And the thing that you do with that is you keep that same sensibility in the prequel series. The difference is the Valiant brothers, while not being as dour as Eddie was, are very serious. They're very dedicated to solving crimes. They're kind of the quintessential, almost Miami Vice style. They are, the Miami Vice really works because Crockett and Tubbs are contrasted with, now not cartoony, but in some cases pretty close, these big over-the-top villain characters. And so what works is their dedication to stopping something, and then the criminals, of course, trying to get away with it. Well, you take the same idea where the Valiant brothers are the serious element, and all the crimes in Toontown are ridiculous. And that also lets you thread the needle a little bit more middle ground on having it work for adults and kids. The movie skews adult, even though you could have some younger viewers watch it, I think, where you could do the series where it's a little bit more middle ground, or you could have the same tone. I certainly wouldn't mind. But you could do it where you could have every crime be bloodless. They don't have to be overly violent or sexual or too adult for kids. But you play up the campy, cartoonish, ridiculous elements of them. And that gives you your contrast. And you can still do the same thing. And I'm convinced that can work. And in fact, it makes so much more sense than making either a sequel movie or even a prequel movie. Just make this into a series, because why wouldn't you want to have different types of cartoony crimes? I don't know anything else that's quite done that. It's certainly not in recent memory. So there's a particular niche of a series that is open for doing well. So I wouldn't make a sequel movie. I agree on that with Brian. Ridiculous, don't even try. And a prequel film, yeah, you could do it, but why not make a prequel series? When everything is trying to be a series, this is a natural fit for it. Go watch Brian's video, by the way. It's excellent, and I agree with him on the basics, except I would make it a series. Later.